Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Gabo the Shaman, and today we're talking about birth time rectification, how you can rectify your birth chart. Well, the average person probably will not be able to do that because you need knowledge and skill and expertise and things like that, and it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of time to actually rectify a birth chart, which is why I and my other fellow Vedic astrologers charge a buttload to to do birth time rectifications. So that's why we charge so much, is because it does take a lot of time and it does take a lot of energy, and we only have so much hair to pull out. As I heard one astrologer say the other day, it's a long process. It's a tedious process, and it does take a lot of effort, and it does take a lot of hard work, and you have to know what you're doing. So you have to be very skilled with astrology to begin with, just to do birth time rectification. And so that's why it costs so much. So if you would like your birth time rectified, if you want your own personal rectification, I can get it down to within less than 2 minutes. So using that's the other thing that we'll talk about today, is using the different charts to get your birth time down to a very short window of time, 2 minutes. I was able to rectify my friend's chart and get his birth window down to like 2 hours within 15 minutes. And then because he didn't know what his birth, he didn't have a frame of reference at all for his birth time, so I was able to get that narrowed down to like within a couple of hours. And then after a while I was able to get that down to like 30 minutes, and then down to 15 minutes, and then down to now we're currently working within a 5-minute time frame window. So there's a specific way to do that very, very accurately and very quickly, so it doesn't have to take a long time. But let me see, I'm just going to share this on some platforms just to get the word out there. Bear with me for a second. But yeah, I mean, it like, if you have like a frame of reference, if you have a time frame, even just saying like, morning, afternoon, noontime, evening, things like that, that will help greatly to narrow the window down. Because what we're really doing is we're trying to get it as narrow as possible, as quickly as possible. So the more time that you can rule out, the better it is. So even if you don't know your birth time exactly, and a lot of people, that's a lot of people, a lot of people don't know their exact birth time. Or the other thing is with with documentation and stuff, that's not accurate very much. That could be like a 15-minute window before, like, so it could be a 15-minute window between when you were born and the time that the doctor or nurse recorded the time of birth. That could be, and especially if it was a rough pregnancy, if you have like, if you were born under like bad circumstances where you had health conditions and health concerns and things like that, and they needed to take care of you right away. The birth time, recording your birth time is such a insignificant thing to them. They're, the medical staff are more concerned with making sure that you're okay and things like that. And the birth time, that's not on the top of their priority list. So, this is where Vedic astrology comes in. This is where I come in to the rescue, and I help you to rectify your chart. Now, how this is done is we take a series of events, so may or may not be fortunate. Usually they are. Things like marriage, things like, when your siblings were born, things like when you moved, things like that. We'll take all that stuff into account, your education, things like that. Take all that into account, and we will basically, come up with a narrowed down time frame. So I just wanted to kind of go over what that looks like. So, okay, so let me just pull out my book here, my astrology book. So, so typically when you're looking at a birth chart, when you're looking at somebody's chart and they say, oh, I was born around 11 a.m. That could be 11:01, that could be, 10:30, that could be 10, or that could be 11:30, that's a wide range of, time. So if somebody says, oh, I was born around 11, you can say, okay, well, it's probably, it's probably between 10 and 11:15 is like a good time range that you can start looking at. And so the thing to do is enter the middle of the person's time range. So say they were born between 10 o'clock and 11:15. You would take the middle of that. You would say like 10:35 or so. About 10:35, you would look at what the ascendant is, and you would basically see, is it close to, basically you would see, is it within 3 degrees of the cusp of changing signs. So you would look at, the fastest way to do that is to get a particular astrology software that tells you, okay, this is the beginning of the sign, this is like the time that the sign begins, and this is the time that the sign ends. So that way you can see, is it possible that the sign could change in the time frame. And what we're really looking at is the D10 chart, so the Rashi chart, the birth chart, and we're looking to see if the ascendant changes, if there's any possibility within their time frame that the ascendant changes signs. And if it does change signs, that means that we need to not only consider one sign, but 2 signs. So we kind of need to look at, about, it's like a, you can still have the time range, but you need to look at both signs. Even if one sign is like very little probability that it's, so let's say if the time range was 10 o'clock to 11:15. Well, if the sign goes from Aries to Taurus at 11 o'clock, and there's only 15 minutes of Taurus left, or 15 minutes in Taurus, then there's still an equal probability that it could be Taurus, so you don't want to just automatically eliminate that possibility. There is a possibility that it could be, that the ascendant could be Taurus. So this is kind of what the first step is, to find out, look at their birth time range. So, if somebody has a pretty good probability that they were born between 10 o'clock and 11:15, okay, a.m. If somebody has that probability, then you're just going to stay within that time range. There's no reason to go outside of that time range. We want to look inside of that time range and see what, we're going to look at all of the Varga charts. So not all of them. The Varga charts that we will look at are the D1, the Rashi chart, the D4, which these Vedic names I can't really pronounce. I think it's the Chaturtamsha, I think that's how it's pronounced. But yeah, so that's the D4, and that regards moving, things like moving, things like buying a new home, things like real estate, things like that. And then the D7, which is the Saptamsha chart, which the D7 rules childbirth. So the D7 is all about childbirth. So if we know when their child was born, we can look at the other thing that we look at is the what is it called? The dashas. So we look at the Mahadasha, and then we look at the Antardasha, and then the 3 subsequent dashas to really nail down the specific birth time, or the specific date of birth of their children. So that's the D7. That's one thing that we look at. And then we look at the D9, which would be the Navamsha chart, which would be marriage and long-term relationships. And so everybody knows what day they got married. It's on documentation somewhere. They don't have to really think about it. It's pretty easy, easy to pull up. And let's say if somebody didn't get married, if they are totally, been single all their life, and they don't want to get married, there's something called a sannyas yoga, and that is seen in monks, in those who are celibate, in those who are what do they call it? I forget the word, but ascetics, I think. So basically, if you're disinclined to marriage, there's also something in your D9 chart that we can look at to see if that's the case for you or not. And then so there's a lot to look at. Like, there's a lot that goes into birth time rectifications, and goes into finding out exactly when somebody was born, because their time of birth could be recorded in, that's not the main priority when you're being born. The main priority is your health and making sure that you're okay and that you're going to survive. So recording down the birth time is not the doctor's, priority. And so this is why we get such drastic, differences in predictions and things like that, things that don't come true and stuff like that, because really you need to know the exact time of birth in order to have an accurate birth chart, because we do use the Vargas, we do use the divisional charts to make predictions. And so if those if the birth time isn't accurate, if your chart's not accurate, then I mean that the prediction is not going to be accurate. So it's very, very important that we have an accurate birth time. So let's continue. The other thing that we look at is, so the D9 chart, the Navamsha chart, which is marriage and like long-term relationships. So and then we have the D10 chart, which is your career. So pretty much everybody has a good idea of when they started their career, when they started a new job, and things like that. We can look at our resume to find that information out. And so even if we don't have the exact day, which is optimal, that's okay. You know, if we have the month, then that works as well. So it's, you know, we can work with that. And then, so the D10 is our career and our job, and the D24, which is the Siddhamsha, is our education. So the D24 is our education. So we, you know, generally speaking, people know when they started college and ended college and graduated and all that good stuff. So we can use those dates as well, and looking at the dashas to determine their birth time. And so how we do this is we go into these different charts, and and we also use the D60, which is which gets it down to 2 minutes. So I'll just go through the charts here and list like the duration of the ascendant in each chart, because this is how we really narrow down birth times. So the ascendant, or the D1 Rashi chart, has a roughly a 120 minute duration of ascendant. So that means that whatever your ascendant is, there's and you could be born on a cusp, which is like, you know, more nuanced to get into, but basically the ascendant in your zodiac, or in your excuse me so basically the ascendant in your chart changes every 2 hours. So there's 12 zodiac signs, and there's 24 hours in a day. So each zodiac sign changes every 2 hours. And then from there we have the D4 chart, which basically that means that your birth chart is divided into 4 parts. So the D4, if we can determine the ascendant in the D4 chart, which basically relates to home, like moving, anytime you move to a new city, a new home, buy a home, things like that, that's going to be seen in the D4. So if we can get that ascendant in the D4 pinpointed down to an accurate ascendant, we can narrow that birth time down from 2 hours, going from 2 hours down to 30 minutes. That's a huge, you know, funnel. That's a huge, that's a lot of time that we cut out. So that's huge. And then from there we have the D7. Now I will mention, if somebody has a lot of siblings, you can also use, maybe let's say they haven't moved a lot, they have only moved maybe one time in their lives. That's perfectly fine. But if they have more sibling and the dates of births of their siblings, then we can use the D3, which is, I forget the name of that in the Vedic chart, but the D3 chart, we would use that. So and that's pretty similar too. And then so we would use either a D3 or D4, and then we would use the D7. So let's say the D7 is the Saptamsha that rules childbirth, and that is, if we can get that narrowed down, if we can get the ascendant in this Saptamsha narrowed down, then we can narrow it down from 30 minutes, right? So we're going from 30 minutes to 17 minutes. So that's a huge leap in narrowing it down even further. So that's awesome. And then moving on from there, looking at the D9, if we can get the D9 ascendant nailed down, then we would narrow that down even further to 13 minutes. And then basically what we're doing is so we can actually use the D9 or D10. Maybe they're not prone to marriage, so they haven't gotten married, but they are very career focused. If they're very career focused, then you would use the D10 chart, because they would have more going on in their career than their relationship life. So then we have the D24. So if we can figure out the ascendant in the D24 chart, then which is basically their education. So everybody's pretty much, at least in the developed world, in the America, and other developed countries, people tend to go to school. They, at least some like trade school, technical school, something. And so we can use that information to really narrow down their birth time even further. So the D24 narrows it down to 5 minutes. And then if we have the right D24 ascendant in the D24, then we can move on to the D60, and that narrows it down to 2 minutes. So that's huge. So we basically go from 2 hours of a possibility of birth time to 2 minutes, which is huge. And so once we have this systematized, once we have a system in place to kind of narrow our focus down, once we know what we're doing and we have a system in place to do that, it becomes very easy, very efficient. Now maybe easy is not the right word, because there's a lot of charts, there's a lot, that could, you have to be a very experienced astrologer to know what you're looking for, basically. But once you have this system in place, things get a lot easier because you have a system. So instead of going from the D1, the Rashi chart, to the D60, you would have you would have a lot of options. So you would have 60 options if you went straight from the D1 ascendant to the D60 ascendant. That would be 60 ascendants to pick from. Now, of course, there's only 12 signs, and you would have, multiples of 12. Those same 12 would rotate around the D60 a few times. But anyway, so this is why using this formula of the D1, D4, D7, D9, D10, D24, D60, all those things really narrow it down into a funnel, so you know exactly what you're looking for. Now, as far as actually doing the rectification, that's something entirely different. I kind of gave you a system to kind of look at people's charts and to kind of narrow that time frame down as much as you can. Now, here's the thing. The main things that we're looking for are the dashas. So ideally we would have a list of events of people in somebody's life that happened. So a list of events with specific dates, and the more specific the better. You know, some people only have the month of their, you know, the month that they went to college. So let's say August or September of whatever year. But so we can use that. We would just, let's say they just gave us the month, we would go for the middle of the month. So like the 15th of the month. Now let's say somebody, so basically what we're looking for in the actual rectification process is we're looking for the dasha lord, or the planet, and we're looking at the Vimshotri dasha. So we're looking at the dasha lord, which could be any planet, and we're looking to see if that lines up with the ascendant, the house lord, or the karka of any chart. So let's say it's the D7. So let's say somebody had children in their Jupiter dasha, and Jupiter is in the 5th house. Well, so if it was a possibility for us to turn that wheel of the ascendant to make Jupiter in the 5th house, the 5th house is the house of children. So we're looking at, so Jupiter could be in the ascendant, in the 5th house, or even in the 9th house. The 9th house is the fifth from the 5th. So that's also a significator of children. So, you know, it's one of those things that you have to like really dive into the minutia of astrology and really get familiar with it, because it can be really kind of you can run yourself in circles if you don't know what you're doing, and if you don't know the priority of things. So the 3 top priorities are house, lord, and karka. So let's say we're looking at this at the D7, at the Saptamsha, and we're looking at we have a date, and we see that somebody had their children in their Jupiter Mahadasha. Well, first of all, Jupiter is the karka, the significator of children, of childbirth, things like that. So, makes sense that they would have that in their Jupiter karka, in their Jupiter dasha. Secondly, we would want to see where Jupiter is placed, because if Jupiter is placed in a bad house, meaning 6, 8, and 12, I think they call those Drakana houses. Correct me if I'm wrong. But 6th, 8th, or 12th house, that's not a good place for Jupiter to be. That doesn't make any sense for somebody to have, you know, that going on in their chart. Like, if somebody has Jupiter in their 8th house and they have children during their Jupiter dasha, doesn't make sense. Much sense. So, I mean, of course, you can always, well, 8th house is the house of birth. Or, because Scorpio, what is Scorpio? Birth, death, sex, transformation, sudden ups and downs, sudden gains and losses, things like that. So, but yeah, so 6, 8, and 12 are not good houses, not auspicious houses for childbirth. So, so if somebody has an ascendant with that going on, then we would turn the ascendant. We would make it go forward. See if we can make it. Well, here's the thing. We need to examine what ascendants go from. So ascendants change. So in the D7 chart, the D7 ascendant is going to change signs every 17 minutes. So we need to look at every possible ascendant in our time frame. So if somebody says, "Oh, I was born from 10 o'clock to 11:15," that's their closest estimate. So we need to look at what signs, what ascendants are in the D7 from 10 o'clock to 11:15. Looking at all those possibilities, and then we pick which one makes the most rational sense. So if we have one where Jupiter is in either the ascendant, a big clue for things happening in a chart is looking at the ascendant. If Jupiter is in the ascendant of a D7 chart, that's a good indicator of that's the right ascendant. Let's say somebody had children in their Jupiter dasha, and Jupiter is in the ascendant of their D7, or so that's a correct ascendant. That would be a rectified D7 chart. I would consider that a rectified D7 chart. So now we have 17 minutes to play with. So, and then we go into the deeper charts. We go into the, we could look at the Navamsha. Did they get married? When did they get married? Did they get married in their Jupiter period, in their Venus period, Saturn period? And then look at where Saturn is placed. Let's say somebody got married in their Venus period. Not only is Venus the karka of marriage, but Venus is also, we would have to look at where Venus is placed in their chart. So we're going to look at the 7th house. So in their D9 Navamsha, we would look at the 7th house. That's the house of marriage and partnerships and things like that. We'd see what's in their 7th house. We would see if their 7th lord is Venus. So we would look at the 7th house, what planets are in there, and then we would look at the 7th lord. So if there's no planets in there, but the 7th lord is Venus, if they have, let's say they have Taurus in the 7th house, making them a Scorpio ascendant, then, and they got married during their Venus dasha, that would be considered a rectified chart. So looking at all the possibilities of the ascendants in the D9 in their birth time, because the ascendants change in the D9 the ascendants change every 13 minutes. So so it could be 2 if we've rectified the D4, the D7. And then we go into, so basically we're aligning the dasha lord with the proper planetary placements in the chart. So we're kind of turning that chart so that it makes sense. We're fitting it so it makes sense, makes a logical sense to us in their chart. So that's what we're doing. We're basically turning that chart so it fits. So it's kind of like solving a puzzle. So, you know, you have like, it's like kind of like you have this big box with a lock on it. You turn the lock and you solve that puzzle. Then you have a smaller box with a lock on it, and then you solve that puzzle, open that up, and you have a smaller box. So we're basically narrowing that birth time right down to the span of 2 minutes. So anyway, guys, let's see how long I've been on here. Just a sec. Been live for... damn. For like 36 minutes. I think I'm gonna leave it there, because really this is a huge science to go into, and I don't have time to explain it all in one video, but this kind of gave you a good feeling for what I do as a Vedic astrologer and what I do in my birth time rectifications. I have a very simple system that I'm telling you, it can be very simple when you boil it down to, you know, when you have the right system in place, it can be very simple. However, people's charts and birth, you know, somebody could have absolutely no idea what time they were born, so I'd have to do a lot of, you know, a lot of study and research and things like that. So it can be really tedious, and it can be a lot of work, and this is why I charge so much. So if you would like a Vedic astrology birth time rectification, then you can go to linktree/Gebo the Shaman and purchase a birth time rectification from me. In that, it's not limited to a certain amount of my time. I will take up as much of my time as I need to get your birth chart rectification done properly. When you pay me, you are paying for ironclad, you know, to the best of my ability, making sure that your birth chart is, you know, is done properly and done right. And so that might involve many phone calls or many emails back and forth from me. It might take me a long time to do that. So if you're going to order a birth time rectification from me, please be patient with me. It does take a long time to figure out and to get things in order. But just know that even though I do take a long time, I am damn sure to make sure that your stuff is done right. That's my biggest thing. If you're just going to kind of fudge it and, you know, not do it properly, not do it, you know, if you're not going to do something right, why bother at all? So that's my whole philosophy. So I am a Vedic astrologer that does things to the most precise degree that I possibly can. And when you purchase a Vedic astrology birth time rectification from me, you have my word. You have my word that I will do the best job I can for you. So, yeah, guys, I guess this is really all I had to say today. So, I'm gonna grab a drink of water and let me tell you about my services. More of my services. So as you know, of course, I'm a Vedic astrologer, and if you'd like a Vedic astrology reading from me, so if that means that if you know what your birth time is to the minute, and you're very sure of that, then you can book a Vedic astrology reading with me. And in that, I will give you your own mantra, your own ritual, very powerful information, and things that you can do to begin your own spiritual practice and stuff like that. And then there's a lot that goes into that. So there's that, Vedic astrology readings. I do distance energy healing, so I do combine the Qigong that you see here, and I combine Reiki, and I combine shamanic practices, and do distance energy healing for you. In addition to that, I do offer support groups, so it's good to get together with other people and talk about your feelings and open up and be vulnerable and things like that. That's what I do with the support groups. And their career and life coaching is super important because a lot of times people are just aimless. They're just lost. They don't know what to do. They're kind of wandering around life, kind of directionless, and that's not a good place to be. So I would say getting a career consultation with me will help you to discover your path and purpose in this life. Will help you discover what you really want to do in life. And basically, I'll lead you through a guided meditation, and then I'll ask you a few questions, which you don't need to know the answer to right away. It's easy, easy questions, but it just gets you to open up your creativity and get your mind working and flowing. And by the end of that session, you will know exactly what you want to do with your life. There hasn't been a client yet that has, not known. And then the life coaching is basically designed to be ongoing. And in that, it's basically spiritual counseling, life coaching, things like that. And it's, where I teach you, and I basically teach you all that I have to, like everything that I know. And, it's basically an apprenticeship with me. So that's another thing that you can look into, is the career coaching and life coaching and things like that. I also offer shamanic ritual magic courses. So the shamanic ritual magic courses are basically designed to go into the nine levels of your unconscious mind and your psyche, and really destroy your unconscious blocks, the things that are preventing you from having your greatest wealth, your greatest best health, joy, prosperity, happiness, love in your life. And there's ways that we're blocking ourselves that we don't even notice. So having an awareness of that and going in there and destroying those blocks is super important. As well as we have the emotional awareness course. So we have that is designed to go into basically help you become more aware of your emotions, and also basically give you a way to cope with them, a way to make them less intense and more tolerable, and things like that. So healthy coping mechanisms, you can find those in that course, as well as the support groups. The support groups are basically designed to as a way of sharing our feelings with other people and things like that, and really get us to open up and be vulnerable and emotionally open to other people. So guys, I have also my Qigong courses here, the Cosmic Qigong and the self-transformation challenge. The Cosmic Qigong is basically a beginner's level Qigong program that helps you to open up all your energy meridians and things like that. And it helps you to, become more conscious of your unconscious emotions and things like that. And then the self-transformation challenge, this combines Kundalini Yoga, which you can see me doing right there. And it combines Qigong and meditation. And so if you're really wanting to take your spiritual practices to the next level, then you can check that out. Meditation is super important. Super, super important. And I noticed that, like, I'm more at peace when I do meditate and stuff, and it's just just communing with the universe and becoming one with her. It feels really good to do that. So that'll help you if you have like depression and things like that. Depression is curable and it can be cured, and I've suffered with it for many years, and I can say that I'm feeling much better now. I feel better when I do my meditations and my Qigong practices and things like that. And so, that's pretty much all I have to share. I am open for questions, so I think we have one viewer right now. So if you have any questions for me about birth time rectification or anything like that, please go ahead and drop those in the comments and we will get to them. I'm just going to take a quick break, let my dog out, and I'll be right back, guys. Alrighty, do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? Do we have any concerns? Let's see here. I get super, lightheaded when I do these things. Because I feel like all my energy is going to my brain to help me think, and so I gotta kind of ground myself. So do we have any questions? Do we have any comments, concerns, anything like that? Once again, I will go through, if there's no, comments or anything, I might end the stream here. But I'll just go through the charts again with you. I have the so we have birth time rectification. I did like a whole almost 40 minutes on birth time rectification and how that works, so it's worth going back and rewinding and things like that. But so we would go from the D1 natal chart. That ascendant changes every 2 hours. Then we would rectify the D4 chart, which basically is corresponding to buying a home or moving or things like that. And we would rectify that chart, and that brings it down from 2 hours to 30 minutes. So that's a huge win if we can rectify that chart. Then we have the Saptamsha, the D7, which relates to childbirth, and this changes every 17 minutes. So if we can rectify that, that brings it down to a 17-minute window. And then on top of that, rectifying the D9 Navamsha chart, which corresponds to marriage and relationships, that changes every 13 minutes. So So you see, we're kind of narrowing it down. It's almost like working like a funnel. And eventually we'll get to the D10 and then the D24. Now the D24 is super. The thing about the D24 is it's super. It basically narrows the birth time down to a 5-minute window, which is huge. So just by looking at somebody's education, we can narrow that down to a 5-minute window. And basically, I'm open for any questions right now, any comments, any questions, things like that. I do appreciate honest feelings as well as honest questions. So basically, how a rectification would work is we would look at we would basically look at the time range that someone was born in. Okay, let's say it's 10 o'clock a.m. to 11:15 p.m. or no, a.m. Anyway, we'd look at that time range, and then we would see, okay, is there any possible ascendant changes in the D1? Looking at the fastest thing that changes in the birth chart, aside from the moon position, the moon placement, the specific padas that the moon is in, the fastest thing that changes in a birth chart is the ascendant. And this is because that's based on the Earth's relationship with the stars. And so when the ascendant changes, that puts things into different house positions, and that puts planets into, that it's almost like turning your chart. It's putting planets and things into different house positions. So having a range of ascendants to choose from, we can go through each divisional chart and see what makes logical sense to be where. So, for example, let me grab a drink of water here, guys. My throat is kind of going out on me. And be happy to take any questions or anything like that. But basically how it works is we would take, the possible range of birth time, and then we would see the ascendants that were, possible in that birth time, and we would go ahead and pick the one that makes the most logical sense. So say if somebody had a child in their Jupiter dasha, and their Jupiter dasha could be in their based on the range of ascendants, it could be in their 6th house, their 5th house, or their 4th house. Well, the 5th house is the natural house of childbirth, so we would put it in the 5th house. That makes most logical sense. Moving on from there, if we had, someone had a possibility of Venus being in their 5th house, or no, in their 6th house, 7th house, or 8th house in their D9, and they got married during their Venus dasha, it would make most sense, since the 6th house and the 8th house are negative houses. They are, I believe they're called Drakana houses, 6, 8, and 12. Anyway, but the most logical explanation would be to put Venus in the 7th house. That would make most sense. And then let's say we have D10. So we have the D10 chart, and somebody got a new career during their Jupiter dasha. Well, what if Jupiter was placed in their, so the ascendant, the possible ascendants, let's say put Jupiter in the 9th, 10th, or 11th house. Well, the most logical sense that would make is to put Jupiter in the 10th house, because Jupiter is not only the karka of career, or like, you know, positive things like income and things like that, but it's also in the 10th house, which the 10th house deals with career. So if you got a new career during your Jupiter dasha, make more sense if it was a possibility that your Jupiter dasha was in, or Jupiter was in your 10th house. So things like that. Alright guys, I'm kind of getting a little bit tired here, so I see there's somebody still watching. Thank you for watching. And yeah, I think I'm gonna end it here. So I hope this was helpful for you. Once again, guys, I do Vedic astrology readings, and I do birth time rectification. And one thing to know about me is that if I put my stamp of approval on your birth time rectification that I do, you can know that it's 100% backed up by me. My reputation and everything depends on me doing a good job for you guys. You know, my reputation as an astrologer, my reputation as someone here on YouTube, and things like that. So I do take birth time rectification very seriously, because if you don't have the right birth time, and if somebody, you know, tells you, oh, you were born way like 18 hours ahead of where like your actual birth time range, that's not okay. That's not acceptable. Like, my job is to figure out the most logical explanation, come to the most logical conclusion of, you know, figuring out your birth time based on the birth time range that you give me. And if you don't have an exact time of your birth, or like, say, like I was just doing a birth time rectification for my friend. He didn't know what time he was born. Like, he didn't know morning, noontime, afternoon, evening, nighttime. He didn't have any clue of what time he was born at all. So I had to really do a lot. So one of the things that I'll do is, if you don't know what time you're born at all, there's certain padas and nakshatras that the moon moves it in, and so I might have you look at I might like explain to you each nakshatra, each pada. I might have you watch this guy KRS channel. He's great. He's a great astrologer on YouTube. Might have you watch a couple of his videos to see which pada your moon is in, and then from there I can narrow it down to a smaller window of time, which will narrow it down to about 4 to 5 ascendants. So if we get your moon pada narrowed down, then that narrows the possibility of ascendants to just a few. And then from there we can look at, like, this is what I had to do with my friend. I had him look at the videos that I make, and that you know, I made videos on ascendants as well as KRS, but yeah, look at the videos on the ascendants and see what resonates with you. because the biggest thing is the ascendant. So the specific moon pada that he chose, that's what resonated best with him, but it wasn't like a super ideal match. That's just what resonated best. However, when I said, okay, you have to choose from Aries ascendant, Taurus ascendant, Gemini ascendant, or Cancer ascendant, he like basically looked at the information and chose Taurus, and that really spoke to him. That really resonated with him. So I knew, okay, that's a 2 hour window that I have to work with now. That's from going from 24 hours down to 2 hours. That's super awesome. And then from there, I looked at I got all of his the events that happened throughout his life, things like that, and looked at the specific dashas that they were in and things like that. And I was able to narrow it down. He had a lot of siblings, so I was able to get that D3 chart going and narrow that down and it worked. So it's all about going from the ascendant to either the D3 or D4, and then going from that to the D7 if they have children. If they don't have children, you can skip the D7. If they do, well, I would recommend looking at the D9, at least to see if there is a sannyas going on, sannyas yoga going on. So like, let's say if somebody's not married and they have no interest in marriage, they might have a sannyas yoga going on in their D9 chart. So that's something to look at. Sannyas yoga basically means it's an indicator of celibacy and being like a monk, basically, not having a wife or anything, or a partner. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty much. And then we basically, it's this process of narrowing things down. And if you want to learn birth time rectification, I can teach you that. That would be, you could book a private session with me and we could go through that. I could teach you. So if you're interested in becoming an astrologer or someone who does birth time rectification, I can definitely teach you. It is a good money-making opportunity, because not many people can say with 100% accuracy the exact minute that they were born. So it's pretty important too, because it's providing a valuable service to people. So anyway, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there. We have no questions, we have no comments, so nothing really to interact with you all about. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there. And I thank you guys for watching, and we will talk to you next time, alright? I hope you all have a good day, and we will talk to you next time. Alright, guys. And before you go, make sure to leave a subscribe, a like, comment, all that good stuff. The subscribes and the likes really help, because as you can see here, 90% of my audience is not subscribed, so it really helps if you subscribe. If you like the content, if you like the things that I'm providing here, the knowledge that I'm providing here, then go ahead and subscribe and all that good stuff. So, and like too, please. So yeah, thank you for watching, and we will talk to you next time. Alrighty. Peace.